All right. Let's start with maths. If we've got a circle and you want to find its circumference, you've been taught. This one, I actually haven't read that one. Something like that. Now, that's all well and good. What is it? It's a formula, tool you might say, thing that helps you find what you're looking for. But it disguises something, and if I rearrange it, I'll kind of reveal what that is. For those who can read my handwriting, there you go. If you can't, it says pi is equal to the circumference over the diameter. Why does that matter? Well, that's what pi is. It's defined as, for a circle, you take a circumference of something and you divide it by the diameter and you get the number pi. This fact is emphasized in textbooks, but it's very quickly forgotten because of the way you are solving problems in maths, particularly when you're learning in school. The process is you have a textbook, you're introduced to some new way of solving some new problem that you're not yet familiar with. You're presented with the problem, work solutions, or maybe the solution comes first, something of this variety, and then you have a series of questions to work through in that context within which you get to play and kind of use this tool as though I had a hammer and some nails to push in. But the problem is there's no agency or ownership over the thing you're using. You don't earn pi. You don't find it yourself and then use it. You're sort of starved of the opportunity to learn what pi is to then appreciate why it's useful or to then use it. So what I mean by that is you could just, as a teacher or as a student, just go find a circle in the world. Circle, circle. Measure the circumference of each. Measure the diameter of each. Do the ratio for each, and you will find, and obviously, we're limited in terms of the precision with which we can measure these things, but you will find the ratio will be pi in either case. In that sense, you're earning the number. You're earning the value that you're going to then use in formulas later on. Why does this matter? You could say, well, you just use the formula, and it certainly is the case. And how often is it that you're just thinking, man, why all this fucking screw around with like proving and the work solutions? Just give me the fucking formula and I'll be sweet. And you're right, fine, except when you get in a test, it's always the case that the biggest fuck-ups happening are not knowing what tools you should be using. It's like, I hit that question and in the test, I couldn't figure out what I needed to do. And then when the teacher was going through it in class, as soon as he pointed out, you need to use trig here, it was like, fuck, of course you need to use trig. What the fuck was wrong with me at the time? How couldn't I figure that out? And it's often drummed down to like a silly mistake. I would say what's more important and more to the point is you're missing the most important part of learning, and that is agency and embedding it in your experiences, your own story and narrative. If you had the ownership of the values that you use in formulas that someone would have if they happened to go into a class where the teacher didn't give them pi, but spent a class helping them, kind of nudging them or nurturing the discovery of that number as a ratio of the circumference of a circle and its diameter, those kids won't forget it. And they've started at the point of it solving a problem. Because so often in maths, it's like, here's a problem. Whether or not you care about what that problem is irrelevant. It's a problem that you need to care about. And here are the tools to solve it. How often in the actual world is it the case that you're working through a problem and the tools are just granted to you? Or better yet, the problem isn't isn't even one you discover. Someone just tells you the problem, and then on top of that tells you the tools to use. Even if you want to ignore all that and you want to just focus on, mate, I'm doing this shit to get a good grade, to get into a university degree I want to do. I'm not fussed about what I'm doing now, and it's fucking real world applications, fine. And I agree, like, fine, that makes a lot of sense. I'm not gonna disparage that at all. If that's where you're at, then I would suggest this. In exams, you don't know what problem you're going to be dealing with. Meaning, I open that book, first question, I don't know what the topic will be. I have no reason to know it. When you open a textbook to study, you know the topic you're in. And quite often, teachers will go, hey, I'm so good, I've gone and gathered together a whole bunch of different HSC questions, or like SAT if you're in America. All these questions related to a certain topic, so you can just fucking smash this topic. But what we fail to recognize is just by grouping all those questions, you've taken out the complexity of just determining what question does this topic even relate to. So if I would wager, if you studied in this manner, if you only ever studied in a way where you went through all the categories, all the topics, and you smashed out all the questions, and you compare that person to the guy who just went and did the past papers where all the questions are already scattered, if you compare them, the guy who did them when they're scattered would do far better. Why? Because exams scatter them. And even if they didn't scatter them, I think he would do better. Because any exposure to more variability is so much more related to the complexities and the sort of dynamic nature of the world. Things just don't go according to plan. And the same can be true even in a highly controlled environment like an exam, where teachers claim and examiners claim that they're only testing you according to syllabus points, but they have to be somewhat creative or flexible in that regard, because otherwise they're just going to ask exactly the same question, and the extent of variability will be changing names here and there, or changing changing values of variables or things like this. And that would just be so easily gameable. I want to talk about two different conversations I've had with friends of mine. First one was with a good friend of mine from school. I won't say his name for legal reasons. His name's Daniel, I'm just kidding. Good guy, did a trade, left early. School wasn't for him. Don't think he enjoyed much of school, other than hanging out with mates. But I just think the academic setting was all wrong for him. And him and I had a conversation a little bit ago now, but recently enough. And we talked about, he told me how he's been using things that he was exposed to at school, but hated at the time or wasn't interested in, but came to find them very useful for his profession later on. He's a metal fabricator. He was using trigonometry in his profession, and it simplified tasks for him that I guess gave him an appreciation for that tool that previously school wasn't able to garner at all. And so I would say the story there is something like, when you're at school, you don't appreciate the value of it. And so you don't pay attention, you don't feel motivated, you don't bother, and you hate the process. That might be one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is maybe school just fucks up in its delivery. I mean, he just needed an application. Or not just an application, he needed a problem that he was interested in solving, and then the tool became valuable to him. And it was so valuable that the process of applying it was interesting. He felt motivated to do so. How does that relate to what we've talked about? Well, this circle example is just an application, like an application of maths. But I guess the way we should think about it is, maths is a tool. It's a language for understanding, at least for most people, it's a language for understanding relationships, physical relationships, or other relationships between physical things in the real world, physical objects. So if you don't fucking care about that, if you're not encountering problems in the things you're interested in that require this tool, why fucking care? Why bother? It's a really hard thing to motivate for someone. And I would argue, let's just not do it until we have that reason for them. Second point, another friend, I asked her, she's going through a degree at the moment, I asked her, do you have a healthy relationship with learning? She thought it was interesting, and I think she kind of would summarize her position as not really. And I think that's because learning anyone that's been to school, learning doesn't necessarily mean the acquiring of skill or knowledge about things. It means it's embedded in the pedagogy of school and the process of doing exams and assessments. This one lets me say words like pedagogy. And so the thing that should be absolutely enjoyable because it enriches one's life, it enables you to solve problems and flourish, that thing is tarnished, it's destroyed. I bring this up, this conversation and the implications to me are relevant to this situation because if a student doesn't give a fuck about circles or physical relationships or just math as it exists, or rather as it is just as a tool or a language devoid of any application or whatever, if they don't care, don't force it on them because you've made a chore of something for no good reason. You might say, oh, well, he only knew to use trig later on because he was forced to do it at school. Well, he would say, I didn't fucking remember anything. I just had the loosest notion that maths exists and that there are lots of ways to solve for these things, solve for unknowns given certain things that already are the case. Instead of putting him through all this shit, I think most people would agree it'd be better to just make them aware that, hey, if you ever are dealing with problems, there's this whole discipline that is applied to solve these problems, given what you do know about the world. What can you find out based on what you already know? I guess that's like the application of math in the most general sense. And I think my feeling is he would have just been better served if his whole exposure to math was just that at school. He went on and did his trade, and then he realized certain situations where it's like, hey, now I've got an actual reason to do this. There's obviously a broader point here than me just demonstrating how much I know. I've had a lot of experience trying to share these thoughts with people over the years, particularly as a tutor. And I've just seen these things occur again and again. So there's one more point I want to talk about, or one more thing I want to talk about, and that is before we're even exposed to a problem in some sort of academic setting, let's try to flip the script on how we approach it. This is implied in this whole circle thing I've talked about, but instead of focusing on the right way to solve problems or the correct way or the best way, let's just fucking fail. Let's just expose ourselves to the problem in the absence of having been given a solution and see if we can figure it out. I think the current order of events, the current structure and pedagogy just prohibits this entirely. Even if you take ownership of your own studies, the usual procedure is you make your way through a textbook. Even if you go ahead of the class, it's still making your own way through a textbook. You're presented first with, here's the work solutions for how to solve integrals for trigonometric functions. And then, would you look at that? There's fucking 25 questions you can work on. That's fucking awesome. What if I just gave you the question? You have a loose understanding of integration. If you've already had exposure to these things, you can actually get a lot of the way there. And then when you finally do figure it out, or worst case scenario, you fuck it up and fail, and you go, teacher, I get stuck here. I don't know what to do beyond this point. Then the teacher comes in with the solution, and it's like fucking hanging the final ornament on a Christmas tree, rather than what is effectively trying to hang it on nothing. The best thing you can do is fail a bunch. And then someone comes in and goes, boom, here's the missing ingredient, and now it all falls in place. it's hard to demonstrate to someone just how much you know about this stuff. And you can say all these things, and you know, often you can even cite stuff. I can, oh, here's a citation for,